The rain fell in a relentless whisper, soaking the black umbrellas that dotted the cemetery like mourners' shadows. Ethan Carter knelt beside his father's grave, the cold earth seeping through his jeans, his heart a tangled knot of grief and secrets. He'd never imagined proposing here. Now, with his father's casket barely lowered. But love, like rain, didn't wait for perfect moments. Ethan's fingers trembled as he clutched the small velvet box in his pocket. At 26, he'd spent years hiding who he was, molding himself into the son his father, James Carter, expected a stoic, small-town mechanic who'd inherit the family auto shop in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. But James was gone now, taken by a sudden heart attack, and Ethan's secret couldn't stay buried any longer. Not when Caleb stood a few feet away, his warm brown eyes watching Ethan with a quiet strength that had kept him sane through the past week's chaos. Caleb Monroe, with his easy smile and paint-splattered hands, had been Ethan's anchor since they met 2 years ago at an art fair in Pittsburgh. Ethan, on a rare day off, had wandered into Caleb's booth, drawn to a canvas bursting with blues and gold painting that felt like freedom. They'd talk for hours, then days, then months, until Ethan realized he wasn't just falling for Caleb. He was falling into himself. But Willow Creek wasn't Pittsburgh. Here, in a town where everyone knew your name and judged your choices, their love was a whispered rumor, a truth Ethan had kept from his father. The funeral was small, just a handful of locals braving the drizzle to pay respects. James had been a respected man, gruff but fair, running Carter's auto with an iron hand. Ethan scanned the crowd. Mrs. Delaney, who'd brought casseroles every Sunday. Tom, the shop's oldest employee. And Sarah, Ethan's high school friend, who shot him a sympathetic glance. None of them knew about Caleb. None of them knew that Ethan's heart was splitting not just for his father, but for the life he'd hidden. Ethan. Caleb's voice was soft, cutting through the rain's murmur. He stepped closer, his boots sinking into the muddy grass. You don't have to do this today. Ethan stood, wiping his hands on his jeans, the velvet box heavy as a stone. I do, he said, voice raw. I can't keep pretending. Not anymore. The crowd was dispersing, umbrellas bobbing toward the parking lot. Ethan's pulse raced. He'd planned this moment for months, imagining a quiet dinner, maybe a walk by the creek. But standing here, with his father's absence like a weight on his chest, Ethan felt a reckless urgency. He pulled Caleb aside, near a willow tree that drooped over the graves, its branches swaying like mourners. Caleb, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. I've spent my whole life trying to be what he wanted. The son who'd take over the shop, marry a nice girl, keep the Carter name proud. But I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who loves you, and I don't want to hide it anymore. Caleb's eyes widened, a flicker of hope beneath his grief. Ethan dropped to one knee, mud soaking his jeans, and opened the velvet box. The ring inside was simple, silver with a single etched linea promise carved in metal. Will you marry me? Gasps rippled through the few mourners still lingering. Mrs. Delaney's umbrella tilted, her mouth agape. Tom froze, his weathered face unreadable. Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears, but she didn't look away. Caleb, though, was all that mattered. His lips parted, a shaky smile breaking through. Ethan, yes. God, yes. Ethan slid the ring onto Caleb's finger, the world narrowing to the warmth of his hand. For a moment, It was just them, the rain, and the weight of a truth finally spoken. But the moment shattered when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Ethan James Carter, what the hell are you doing?" It was Aunt Lorraine, James's older sister, striding toward them, her face a storm cloud. "This is your father's funeral, not some spectacle." Ethan stood, squaring his shoulders. "I'm honoring him, Aunt Lorraine, by being honest, by being me." Her eyes narrowed, flicking to Caleb, then back to Ethan. "Your father would have been ashamed." The word stung, but Ethan held Caleb's hand tighter. "Maybe. But he's not here to tell me that. And I'm done living for his approval." Lorraine stormed off, muttering about disgrace. The other mourners whispered, their stares heavy. Ethan felt exposed, raw. But Caleb's hand in his was a lifeline. They left the cemetery together, the ring glinting faintly on Caleb's finger, a small defiance against the town's judgment. That night, in Ethan's small apartment above the auto shop, they sat on the couch, Caleb's head resting on Ethan's shoulder. The rain had stopped, leaving a quiet that felt both fragile and sacred. "You sure about this?" Caleb asked, his voice low. "This town, it's not going to be easy." "I know," Ethan said, kissing his forehead. "But you're worth it. We're worth it." The next morning, Ethan woke to a voicemail from Mr. Hargrove, his father's lawyer. The will reading was scheduled for noon at the old law office downtown. Ethan's stomach churned. James had never been one for surprises. But something in Hargrove's tone clipped. Nervous edge made Ethan uneasy. He glanced at Caleb, still asleep, the ring catching the morning light. Whatever the will held, Ethan told himself, they'd face it together. But as they walked into Hargrove's office later that day, the air thick with the scent of old books and coffee, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his father's shadow wasn't done with him yet. The room was crowded. Lorraine, a few cousins, Tom, and a woman Ethan didn't recognize, her sharp eyes scanning the group like a hawk. Hargrove cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, and began to read. "To my son, Ethan James Carter." Hargrove's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "I leave the auto shop, Carter's Auto, in its entirety, on one condition." Ethan's heart stopped. A condition? His father's voice, even from the grave, had a way of pulling strings. Caleb squeezed his hand under the table, grounding him. But as Hargrove continued, the words that followed weren't just a condition, they were a bombshell that would change everything. Hargrove's voice wavered as he read the condition, each word landing like a stone in Ethan's chest. That Ethan dissolves any personal relationships deemed incompatible with the Carter family legacy and marries a suitable partner within 1 year of my passing, as determined by my sister, Lorraine Carter. The room went silent, the kind of quiet that suffocates. Ethan's grip on Caleb's hand tightened, his knuckles white. Lorraine's lips curled into a thin, triumphant smile. "James always knew what was best for the family," she said, her voice dripping with authority. "He built that shop from nothing. He wanted it to stay respectable." "Respectable?" Ethan's voice cracked, anger flaring. "You mean he wanted me to live a lie? To be someone I'm not?" Hargrove raised a hand, his face pale. "There's more, Ethan. If you fail to meet this condition, the shop will be sold, and the proceeds will go to a charity of Lorraine's choosing." The auto shop wasn't just a business, it was Ethan's life. He'd spent his childhood under car hoods, learning torque from his father's calloused hands. It was the only piece of James he had left, flawed as their relationship had been. Losing it would mean losing a part of himself. Caleb's thumb brushed over Ethan's knuckles, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. But the weight of the will pressed down harder. The mystery woman in the room, introduced as Ms. Clara Vaughn, a representative from a legal firm in Philadelphia, spoke up. There's also a sealed letter from James, addressed to Ethan. It's to be opened privately, after this meeting. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held a flicker of something pity. Maybe. Or curiosity. Ethan barely heard her. His mind was spinning. A year to marry someone suitable. A year to erase Caleb. To betray everything they'd built. He glanced at Caleb, whose face was a mask of calm. But Ethan knew him well enough to see the hurt in his tightened jaw. Outside, in the parking lot, Ethan clutched the sealed envelope, its edges worn as if James had hesitated before sealing it. Caleb leaned against their truck, his arms crossed. You don't have to open it now, he said. Whatever's in there, it's just words. They don't change us. But Ethan needed to know. He tore open the envelope, his hands unsteady. The letter was short, written in James's precise, no-nonsense scrawl. Ethan, I raised you to carry on the Carter name with pride. I've heard whispers about you and that artist. If they're true, end it. The shop is your legacy, but only if you choose the right path. Don't disappoint me. Dad. Ethan's throat burned. He handed the letter to Caleb, who read it in silence, his expression unreadable. He didn't even know me, Caleb said finally, his voice low. And he's still trying to control you. He's gone, Ethan said, but the words felt hollow. James's will wasn't just a legal document. It was a gauntlet thrown from beyond the grave, daring Ethan to choose between his past and his future. Back at the apartment, Ethan paced, the letter crumpled on the coffee table. Caleb sat quietly, sketching in his notebook. Habit he turned to when words failed. We could fight it, Ethan said, his voice rising. There's got to be a loophole. Hargrove's a decent guy. He'll help us. Caleb set his pencil down. Ethan, this isn't just about the shop. It's about you. What you want. If you fight this, you're fighting your dad's ghost. And this town'll make it hell for us. Ethan stopped, his chest tight. You think I should give up? Just let you go? No, Caleb said, standing to meet Ethan's gaze. I think you should fight for what you love. But you need to be sure it's worth it. The shop. This town, it's your history. I'm just me. Ethan crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling Caleb into a fierce kiss. You're not just anything. You're everything. That night, they made a plan. They'd meet with Hargrove again, dig into the will's fine print. Ethan refused to let his father's shadow dictate his life. But the stakes were higher now. Rumors were already spreading. Mrs. Delaney had called, her voice laced with concern, asking if Ethan was okay after the funeral. Tom had left a vague voicemail about talking things over. Willow Creek was closing in, and Ethan felt the walls tightening. The next day, they drove to Hargrove's office, the letter tucked in Ethan's pocket like a live wire. Hargrove looked exhausted, his desk cluttered with files. I've reviewed the will, he said. It's ironclad. Ethan, your father had it drafted by a top firm in Philly. But there's something else. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a document dated 6 months before James's death, a codicil to the will, mentioning a trust fund Ethan had never heard of. "It's worth $200. 000. Hargrove said. "Set up for you. But only accessible if you comply with the will's terms." Ethan's head spun. $200,000. Enough to start over. To leave Willow Creek behind. But at what cost? He looked at Caleb, whose face was unreadable, and felt the first crack in his resolve. Was love enough to fight a town, a legacy, and a fortune? Ethan stared at the folder, the numbers blurring before his eyes. $200,000. A lifeline. A trap. A betrayal. He pushed it back across Hargrove's desk, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "I don't want it. Not if it means losing him." Caleb's hand found his under the table, a quiet anchor. Hargrove sighed, rubbing his temples. "I understand, Ethan. But you need to know what you're giving up. The shop. The money. It's not just about you. It's your future. Your security." "Security?" Ethan laughed. Bitter. "My father thought he could buy my life. Make me someone I'm not. That's not security. That's a cage." Hargrove leaned back, his chair creaking. "There's one more thing. Clara Vaughn, the woman from the reading's been asking questions about the shop's finances. I don't know her angle, but she's not just here for the will. Be careful." Outside, the air was crisp, the first hint of autumn cutting through Willow Creek's humid haze. Ethan and Caleb walked to the town square, where kids rode bikes and old men played chess on stone tables. It was the kind of place that felt timeless. But to Ethan, it was starting to feel like a prison. "What do we do now?" Caleb asked, his voice soft but steady. "We fight," Ethan said. "I'm not letting my dad's ghost win. We'll find a way to keep the shop without playing his game." But Willow Creek had other plans. By evening, the rumors had spread like wildfire. Ethan's proposal at the funeral was the talk of the diner, the gas station, the church. At the auto shop, Tom cornered Ethan as he worked on a busted carburetor. "Folks are talking, Ethan, saying you're throwing away your dad's legacy. You sure you know what you're doing?" Ethan wiped grease from his hands, his jaw tight. "I'm sure I'm done hiding. You got a problem with that, Tom?" Tom's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "I've known you since you were a kid. Your dad was tough, but he loved you. He built this place for you. Don't let some fling make you forget that." "Caleb's not a fling," Ethan snapped. "And if you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be here." Tom walked away, shaking his head. Ethan's hands shook as he returned to the carburetor, the wrench slipping in his grip. The shop felt smaller, its walls closing in. That night, Caleb cooked dinner spaghetti with sauce from a jar, the only thing he could make without burning. They ate in silence, the weight of the day pressing down. "I don't want to cost you everything," Caleb said finally, twirling pasta on his fork. "The shop, your home, your family. I see how people look at us now. Like we're wrong." Ethan reached across the table, taking Caleb's hand. The ring glinted, a reminder of the promise they'd made. "You're not costing me anything. You're giving me a reason to fight. I just need you to stay with me." Caleb's eyes softened, but worry lingered. "I'm not going anywhere. But this town, it's going to get ugly." He was right. The next day, Ethan found a note slipped under the shop's door. "Faggots don't belong here." The words were scrawled in black marker. jagged and angry. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he didn't show it to Caleb. Instead, he crumpled it and threw it in the trash, his resolve hardening. They'd face this together, no matter how ugly it got. Sarah, Ethan's old friend, stopped by the shop that afternoon. She'd always been the one person in Willow Creek who didn't judge, who'd listen when Ethan ranted about his dad's expectations. "I heard about the will," she said, leaning against a workbench. "And the proposal. That was brave, Ethan." "Or stupid," he muttered, tightening a bolt. "Brave," she insisted. "But you need to know Lorraine's rallying people. She's saying you're unfit to run the shop, that you're disrespecting your dad's memory." Ethan's wrench clattered to the floor. "She's what?" "She's got half the town on her side," Sarah said. "They're planning a meeting at the church tomorrow night to discuss the shop's future. You need to be there." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. Lorraine wasn't just his aunt, she was a force in Willow Creek. A church deacon with a knack for bending people to her will. If she wanted the shop, she'd fight dirty. And with Clara Vaughn sniffing around, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. That night, he and Caleb sat on the apartment's fire escape, sharing a beer and watching the stars. "I keep thinking about that letter," Ethan said. "My dad, he never even tried to know me. Just wanted to control me." Caleb leaned against him, his warmth steadying Ethan's fraying nerves. Maybe he was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of what he didn't understand. "Doesn't make it right," Ethan said, his voice thick. "No," Caleb agreed. "But it makes him human." The words lingered, a small crack in Ethan's anger. He wanted to hate his father, but the truth was Messier. James had been a hard man, but he'd taught Ethan how to rebuild an engine, how to stand tall under pressure. Now, Ethan had to use those lessons to fight for his own life. The church basement smelled of instant coffee and old hymnals, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on the folding chairs. Ethan stood at the back, Caleb beside him, as Lorraine held court at the front. She spoke with the fervor of a preacher, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the 30-odd townsfolk gathered for the community meeting. Ethan's stomach churned as she gestured toward a photo of James, propped on an easel like a saint. "My brother built Carter's auto with his own hands," Lorraine said, her eyes scanning the room. "He wanted it to be a legacy for his son. But Ethan's choices is reckless. Shameful choices are tarnishing that legacy." Ethan's fists clenched. Caleb's hand brushed his, a quiet plea to stay calm. But staying calm wasn't easy when half the town was staring, their faces a mix of pity, judgment, and curiosity. "Mrs. Delaney shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Tom sat stone-faced, arms crossed. Sarah gave Ethan a nod from across the room, her presence a small comfort. "I propose we petition to have the shop's ownership reviewed," Lorraine continued. "If Ethan can't honor his father's wishes, someone else should carry on the Carter name." "That's enough," Ethan said, stepping forward, his voice cutting through the room. The crowd turned, eyes wide. "This isn't about the shop. It's about me. About who I am. And I'm done letting you or my dad tell me that's something to be ashamed of." Lorraine's face reddened. "You proposed to a man at your father's funeral. Ethan, you call that respect?" "I call it love," Ethan shot back. "Something Dad never understood. And neither do you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others whispered. Ethan felt Caleb's presence beside him, steady as ever. but the weight of the room was suffocating. Before Lorraine could respond, Clara Vaughn stood, her tailored suit out of place among the flannel and denim. "If I may," she said, her voice smooth. "There are legal matters to consider. The will's conditions are unusual. I'd like to review the shop's financial records before any decisions are made." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "What's your interest in this?" "Ms. Vaughn." Clara smiled, unruffled. "Ensuring fairness. Mr. Carter's estate is more complex than it appears." The meeting ended in a tense stalemate, with Lorraine promising to protect the town's values and Ethan vowing to fight for the shop. As they left, Sarah caught up with them outside. "Lorraine's got the church crowd, but not everyone's against you," she said. "I'm hearing some folks think she's overstepping. You've got allies. Ethan, don't give up." Back at the apartment, Ethan couldn't sit still. He paced, the floorboards creaking under his boots. "She's not just after the shop," he said. "She wants to erase me. Make it like I never existed." Caleb pulled him onto the couch, his hands firm on Ethan's shoulders. "She can't erase you. You're here. We're here. And we're not going anywhere." Ethan leaned into him, the fight draining out of him for a moment. "What if we lose? The shop, the money, everything." "Then we start over," Caleb said, his voice fierce. "Together." The next day, Ethan met Clara Vaughn at a diner on the edge of town. She sipped black coffee, her sharp eyes studying him. "Your father's will wasn't just about control," she said. "There's something off about the shop's books. James was hiding something, debts. Maybe. Or payments. I need access to the records." Ethan frowned. "Debts? The shop's been solid for years." "On paper," Clara said. "But I've seen discrepancies. If I'm right, it could change everything about the will." Ethan agreed to let her dig, though suspicion gnawed at him. Who was Clara? Really? And why was she so invested? He spent the afternoon at the shop, combing through old ledgers with Tom, who'd reluctantly agreed to help. They found nothing at first, just invoices and receipts. But then, tucked in a locked drawer, Ethan found a notebook in his father's handwriting. Pages of numbers, names, and dates, none of which made sense. One name kept appearing, Vaughn. "Is this about Clara?" Ethan asked, showing Tom the notebook. Tom's face paled. "Your dad, he never mentioned her. But he was secretive the last year. Always taking calls in the back. Locking that drawer." Ethan's unease grew. He took the notebook home, showing it to Caleb. They pored over it, trying to crack its code. But it was like chasing ghosts. That night, another note appeared under the shop's door: "Leave, or you'll regret it." Ethan's blood ran cold. This wasn't just gossip, Anna Maria, it was a threat. He called Sarah, who promised to ask around, see who might be behind it. But as Ethan lay awake, Caleb's breathing steady beside him, he couldn't shake the feeling that the notebook held the key. His father's secrets were unraveling, and they were pulling Ethan and Caleb into a storm they might not survive. The notebook sat on Ethan's kitchen table like a ticking bomb. Its pages, filled with cryptic entries, seemed to mock him: dates, dollar amounts, and the name Vaughn scrawled over and over. Ethan's father had always been meticulous, but this was something else. A secret life, hidden in plain sight. Caleb traced a finger over the numbers, his brow furrowed. This isn't just about the shop, is it? he said, his voice low. Ethan shook his head. I don't know what it's about. But Clara's involved. And those threats. Someone doesn't want us digging. The second note had shaken Ethan more than he'd admitted. He'd tossed it. Like the first. But its words burned in his mind. Caleb wanted to go to the police. But Ethan hesitated. Willow Creek Sheriff was Lorraine's cousin. And trust was in short supply. Instead, they decided to confront Clara. They met her at a park outside town, where the swings creaked in the wind. Clara's calm demeanor cracked slightly when Ethan showed her the notebook. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice sharp. My dad's desk. Ethan said. Your name's all over it. Care to explain? Clara hesitated, then sighed. I worked with your father on a deal last year. He was selling part of the shop's property to a developer. The money $200,000 was supposed to go into that trust fund for you. But something went wrong. The deal never closed. And James wouldn't tell me why. Ethan's mind reeled. So the trust fund, it's tied to some shady deal. Not shady, Clara said quickly. But complicated. There were debts, big ones. James was trying to save the shop without you knowing. Ethan's chest tightened. His father had been drowning, and he'd never said a word. Why's your name in here so much? He pressed. Clara looked away, her jaw tight. Because I was the go-between. The developer's firm is my employer. James trusted me to keep it quiet. Caleb frowned. Quiet from who? Ethan. The town. Both, Clara admitted. And Lorraine. She didn't know about the deal. James thought she'd interfere. Ethan's head spun. His father's secrets. Lorraine's crusade. The threats, it was all connected. But how? He and Caleb spent the night cross-referencing the notebook's dates with the shop's records. They found payments to a company called Brightstone Developments, matching the amounts in the notebook. A quick search revealed Brightstone was a Philadelphia firm with a reputation for aggressive land deals. They wanted the land behind the shop, Ethan said, piecing it together. It's prime for condos. Dad must have backed out when he realized they'd bulldoze half the town. Caleb nodded. And someone's not happy about it. Those notes, maybe they're from Brightstone. Or Lorraine, if she found out. The next day, Ethan confronted Lorraine at her house, the notebook in hand. She stood in her pristine kitchen, her face a mask of disdain. You're accusing me of something, Ethan. After what you did at the funeral. I'm asking questions, Ethan said. About Dad. About this deal with Brightstone. You know anything about it? Lorraine's eyes flicked to the notebook, a flash of unease crossing her face. Your father handled his business. I didn't pry. But you're prying into mine. Ethan shot back. Trying to take the shop. Rallying the town against me. Why? Because you're throwing away everything James built. She snapped. Parading that boy around like it's normal. You're a disgrace. Ethan's hands shook, but he held her gaze. The only disgrace is you using Dad's name to control me. I'm keeping the shop. And I'm keeping Caleb. He left before she could respond, her words echoing in his head. Back at the shop, he found Tom waiting, his expression grim. I heard about the meeting, Tom said. And the notes. Ethan, I don't agree with, your choices. But I don't think you're a disgrace. And I don't think James did either. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. Then why the will? Why the condition? Tom sighed. Your dad was old school. Scared. Maybe. But he loved you. That trust fund set it up to protect you, not to hurt you. The words hit hard, stirring a mix of anger and grief. Ethan wanted to believe Tom. But the notebook, the threats, and Clara's evasions told a different story. That night, he and Caleb made a decision. They'd go to Philadelphia, track down Brightstone, and get answers. The shop, their future, their love, it all hinged on uncovering the truth. As they packed, Caleb slipped the ring off his finger, holding it up. This still means everything, he said. No matter what happens. Ethan kissed him, fierce and sure. We're not losing this. Or each other. Philadelphia's skyline loomed like a steel promise as Ethan and Caleb drove into the city. Brightstone Development's office was a glass tower in Center City, all sleek lines and cold efficiency. Ethan clutched the notebook, its worn edges a lifeline to his father's secrets. Caleb's hand rested on his knee, steadying him as they stepped into the lobby, where a receptionist eyed them with polite suspicion. We're here to see someone about a deal with Carter's Auto, Ethan said, his voice firm despite the nerves twisting his gut. The receptionist made a call, and soon a man in a tailored suit, Mr. Daniel Pierce, Brightstone's lead negotiator, greeted them. His smile was too smooth, his handshake too firm. Mr. Carter, Pierce said, leading them to a conference room with a view of the Schuylkill River. I was sorry to hear about your father. He was a challenging partner. Challenging how? Ethan asked, setting the notebook on the table. Pierce's eyes flicked to it, his smile faltering. Your father agreed to sell us a portion of his land, Pierce said. Prime real estate for a residential project. But he backed out last minute. Cost us millions in planning. We assumed he'd changed his mind about the shop's future. Ethan leaned forward. He didn't tell me about any deal. But your name's in his notebook. And I've been getting threats since he died. You know anything about that? Pierce's face hardened. Threats. That's unfortunate. But we don't operate that way. Our interest was purely financial. Caleb spoke up, his voice calm but sharp. Then why's Clara Vaughn digging into the shop's books? She works for you, right? Pierce hesitated, just long enough to confirm Ethan's suspicions. MS. Vaughn was our liaison with your father. She's thorough. But I assure you, our business with Carter's Auto ended when James withdrew. Ethan didn't buy it. The notebook's numbers didn't lie. Payments had been made, then stopped abruptly. I want to see the contract, he said. Everything you had with my dad. Pierce's smile returned, colder now. I need to consult our legal team. But I'll warn you, Mr. Carter, digging into this could complicate things. For you and your friend. The veiled threat hung in the air. Ethan stood, grabbing the notebook. Send me the contract, or I'll find it myself. Back in their hotel room, Ethan paced, his mind racing. Caleb sat on the bed, sketching absent-mindedly a cityscape, jagged and chaotic. He's hiding something, Ethan said. They all are. Clara, Pierce, maybe even Lorraine. Caleb set his sketchbook down. What if it's not just about the land? What if your dad found out something about Brightstone? Something they didn't want out. Ethan stopped, the idea clicking. Like what? Fraud. Embezzlement. Or worse, Caleb said. Those threats, they're not random. Someone's scared we're getting close. The next morning, Ethan called Sarah, who'd been quietly asking around Willow Creek. "I talked to a guy who used to work for your dad," she said. "He mentioned James arguing with someone from Philly last year. Sounded heated. Said James was worried about selling his soul." Ethan's pulse quickened. He and Caleb spent the day at the county records office, digging through property filings. They found the contract Brightstone had offered $1.2 million for half the shop's land, with a clause tying the deal to the trust fund. But there was something else, a lien on the property, filed by a shell company linked to Brightstone. James had signed it, then tried to void it weeks before his death. He was trapped, Ethan said, staring at the documents. He took their money, then changed his mind. That's why the trust fund's locked up. Caleb nodded. And why someone's trying to scare us off. They want that land, Ethan, and they'll do anything to get it. That night, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Last warning." His blood ran cold. He showed it to Caleb, whose face hardened. "We need to go back," Caleb said. "Confront Clara. She's the key." They drove back to Willow Creek at dawn, the notebook and contract in Ethan's bag. Clara agreed to meet at the diner, her face unreadable as she slid into the booth. "You've been busy," she said, eyeing the documents. "Tell me the truth," Ethan said. "What was my dad into with Brightstone? And why are you still here?" Clara sighed, her composure cracking. "Your father found out Brightstone was using shell companies to dodge taxes. He threatened to expose them. That's why he backed out. And why they're pressuring you now." Ethan's heart pounded. "And the threats? That their work too?" Clara nodded. "Likely. They want the land. And they want you silenced. I've been trying to protect you, Ethan. That's why I stayed." "Protect me?" Ethan snapped. "You've been playing both sides." "I'm trying to fix this," Clara said. "But you need to be careful. Brightstone doesn't play nice." As they left the diner, Ethan felt the weight of his father's choices and his own. The shop, the land, the love he'd fought for it was all at stake. And the fight was far from over. Ethan's truck rumbled down Willow Creek's main street, the contract and notebook on the seat beside him. Clara's words echoed in his head. Brightstone doesn't play nice. He glanced at Caleb, who stared out the window, his jaw tight. The threats, the secrets, the weight of his father's choice, it was all closing in. And Ethan felt like he was driving toward a cliff. "We need to go public," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "If Brightstone's dirty, we expose them. The town, the papers, anyone who'll listen." Caleb turned, his eyes searching Ethan's. "That's dangerous, Ethan. These people, they're not just sending notes anymore. What if they come after us?" "Then we face it together," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I'm done running. From Dad. From this town. From them." Caleb reached for his hand, the ring glinting on his finger. "Okay. Together." They started at the shop, where Ethan called a meeting with Tom and a few loyal employees. He laid out everything: the notebook, the contract, Brightstone's shady dealings. Tom's face darkened as he listened. "Your dad never told me about this," he said. "But I'll back you, Ethan. This shop's your home." Sarah helped spread the word, using her connections at the local paper. By evening, a reporter named Mia Torres was sitting in Ethan's apartment, her recorder on. Ethan told her everything: his father's deal, The threats. The will's cruel condition. Caleb sat beside him, quiet but unwavering. This isn't just about the shop, Ethan said. It's about who gets to decide my life. My love. Mia's story hit the paper the next morning. A front-page headline: Local man fights corporate greed and family legacy. The town buzzed some with support, others with scorn. Lorraine called, her voice venomous. You're dragging our name through the mud, she hissed. James would be ashamed. Then let him be, Ethan snapped. I'm done living for his ghost. But Brightstone didn't stay quiet. That afternoon, Pierce showed up at the shop, flanked by two men in suits. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low. Retract the story, or we'll sue for defamation. And we'll win. Ethan stood his ground, his heart pounding. You don't scare me. I've got proof. And I've got people who'll stand with me. Pierce's smile was cold. We'll see. That night, Ethan and Caleb found the shop's windows smashed, oil cans overturned, tools scattered. A note was pinned to the door, last chance. Ethan's blood boiled, but Caleb's hand on his arm kept him from losing it. They're scared, Caleb said. This means we're close. They called Mia, who brought a photographer to document the damage. The story went viral, picked up by Pittsburgh news outlets. Support poured in donations to fix the shop, letters from strangers, even a call from a lawyer offering to take their case pro bono. But so did the hate. Ethan's inbox filled with slurs, and Caleb's art page was flooded with vile comments. Willow Creek was splitting, half rallying behind Ethan, half clinging to Lorraine's crusade. Clara reached out, her voice urgent. Brightstone's panicking, she said. They're planning to push the lien through. Force a sale. You need to act fast. Ethan and Caleb met with a pro bono lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel Kim. She pored over the contract and lien, her eyes narrowing. This is shaky, she said. The lien's based on a deal your father voided. We can challenge it in court, but it'll be a fight. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. Then we fight. The court date was set for a month out, leaving Ethan and Caleb in a tense limbo. They worked to rebuild the shop, Tom and Sarah pitching in. The town's divide deepened. Some neighbors brought coffee and tools. Others crossed the street to avoid them. Lorraine held another church meeting, railing against Ethan's sinful choices. But fewer people showed up this time. Sarah reported whispers of doubt. Some townsfolk were questioning Lorraine's motives, especially after Mia's articles hinted at her ties to Brightstone's local allies. One night, Ethan found an old photo in the shop's office, him and his dad, grinning beside a rebuilt Mustang when Ethan was 10. The memory stung. James had been proud then, before expectations and secrets drove a wedge between them. Ethan tucked the photo in his wallet, a reminder of the man his father had been, and the man he wasn't. As the court date loomed, Ethan and Caleb clung to each other, their love a quiet rebellion against the chaos. They didn't know if they'd win, but they knew one thing: they'd face whatever came, hand in hand, with the ring on Caleb's finger, a promise stronger than any will. The courtroom in Pittsburgh was a stark contrast to Willow Creek's dusty church basement, polished wood, high ceilings, and a judge who looked like she'd seen every kind of fight. Ethan sat beside Caleb, their hands clasped under the table, the ring on Caleb's finger a quiet anchor. Rachel Kim, their lawyer, stood tall, her briefcase stuffed with evidence, the notebook, the contract, the lien, and Mia's articles. Across the room, Brightstone's legal team loomed, Pierce's cold smile a constant taunt. The hearing began with Rachel's argument. The lien was invalid, based on a deal James had legally voided. Brightstone's lawyers countered, claiming James had breached contract, entitling them to the land. The judge listened, her face unreadable, as Clara testified about James's discovery of Brightstone's tax evasion, a bombshell that made Pierce shift in his seat. Ethan took the stand, his voice steady despite the eyes boring into him. "My dad made mistakes," he said. "He hid things, tried to control me even after he was gone. But he also taught me to stand up for what's right. That's why I'm here. To keep the shop. To keep my life." Caleb's testimony was quieter, but no less powerful. "Ethan's not just fighting for a business," he said. "He's fighting for us. For the right to love who we are, not who someone else wants us to be." The courtroom was silent, the weight of their words hanging heavy. Lorraine, seated in the back, stared straight ahead, her face a mask. Ethan caught her eye, searching for a crack in her armor, but found none. The judge called a recess, and Ethan and Caleb stepped outside, the autumn air sharp against their skin. "You did good in there," Caleb said, his hand finding Ethan's. "So did you," Ethan replied, pulling him close. "Whatever happens, we've got this." The ruling came faster than expected. The judge invalidated the lien, citing James's withdrawal from the deal as legally binding. The shop was Ethan's, free and clear. But the trust fund remained locked. James's conditions still stood. Ethan had 1 year to comply, or the $200,000 would go to Lorraine's charity. The victory was bittersweet. Back in Willow Creek, the shop buzzed with repairs, funded by donations and new customers drawn by Mia's stories. The town was still divided, but the tide was shifting. Mrs. Delaney brought a pie, her awkward smile a peace offering. Tom stayed on, gruff but loyal. Even Lorraine softened, stopping by to say, "I don't understand you, Ethan, but you're still family." Ethan and Caleb used the momentum to plan their future. They'd keep the shop, but they'd also expand Caleb's art classes, taught in a new studio out back, drew kids and adults alike. The ring on Caleb's finger became a symbol, not just of their love, but of their fight. They set a wedding date for the spring, in the same cemetery where Ethan had proposed, a quiet defiance of the past. One evening, as they closed the shop, Ethan pulled out the old photo of him and his dad. "I wish he could have met you," he said to Caleb. "Really met you." Caleb smiled, his hand over Ethan's. Maybe he did, in his own way. That trust fund, it was his way of trying to protect you. He just didn't know how. Ethan nodded, the grief softer now, tempered by love. The will's conditions still loomed, but it didn't matter. They'd build their life without it in their terms, in their town, with their love at the center. As they locked up, the shop's sign gleamed under the streetlights, Carter's Auto. It wasn't just a legacy anymore. It was a promise of resilience, of truth, of a love that had faced a town, a corporation, and a father's shadow, and come out stronger. Ethan took Caleb's hand, the ring catching the light, and they walked into the night, ready for whatever came next.